Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that really tries to cut through all the noise and get straight to the insights you actually need. You know, in this world we live in, we're just constantly swimming in information. It's everywhere. The real superpower, I think, isn't just finding data anymore. It's understanding what matters and understanding it fast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a specific challenge, one that a lot of you face, that really demands peak information extraction, mastering the IELTS listening section. But here's what's interesting. Think of it less like just a test and more like a high-intensity workout for your brain's ability to process information. That's skill. It's absolutely vital for any learner, really, whether you're prepping for an exam, getting ready for a big meeting, or, just trying to be that person who always gets the main point in a conversation. Being able to quickly absorb and understand what you hear is invaluable.
That's a perfect way to put it. And before we jump into all the strategies, maybe we should just quickly demystify the IELTS listening section itself. So this part of the test, it's about 30 minutes long, give or take. And it's actually quite cleverly structured. There are 4 distinct sections, and they generally get a bit more complex as you go. Across those sections, you'll face a total of 40 questions. Simple enough. 1 question, 1 mark. Your raw score, how many you get right out of those 40. That's then directly converted into your band score, which runs from 0 to 9. Now, for many of you aiming for, say, a band 7.5 or maybe higher, which is pretty common for university entry or immigration purposes, you generally need to get a raw score of about 32, maybe a bit more, out of those 40. Understanding these basics, the mechanics, it isn't just about knowing rules. It's about seeing the strategic landscape. It helps take away the guesswork and gives you a really clear target right from the start.
Absolutely. It's about being prepared, being proactive, not just crossing your fingers. So our mission today for this deep dive is pretty clear. We are going to unpack 15 essential high-impact tips. And these aren't just, generic study tips you hear everywhere. These are specific, actionable strategies. We've distilled them from expert analysis, from looking at real test scenarios. They're really designed to be your shortcut to being, incredibly well-informed and hopefully getting that high score you need in the IELTS listening test. These are the nuggets, the key insights you need to really transform how you approach this. Okay, so let's start by laying a really solid foundation because, familiarity breeds confidence, right? Our first tip seems almost too simple, but it's incredibly important. Know the task types. It's kind of like knowing the different kinds of terrain before you start a challenging hike. You need to know what you're walking into.
It's absolutely vital. I mean, imagine going into any kind of contest without knowing what your opponent might throw at you. In the IELTS listening section, you're going to face 6 main question types, and honestly, each one needs a slightly different approach, a different mental toolkit. You've got form, note, table, or flowchart completion. Then there's multiple choice, short answer questions, matching tasks, sentence completion, and finally plan, map, or diagram labeling.
Right. So it's not just enough to kind of recognize them when you see them. Yeah. What's the real benefit of really knowing these task types inside and out?
Well, it's not just about being able to name them, like ticking a box. It's about deeply understanding their specific demands, knowing the typical traps or pitfalls that people often fall into for each type, and crucially, knowing the best strategies to tackle each one effectively. For example, any experienced teacher will tell you that for form completion, you're usually listening for really specific details, names, addresses, phone numbers, and precision is absolutely key. Whereas for multiple choice, it's often more about grasping the speaker's overall attitude or their main purpose. And you really need to learn how to filter out those pesky distractors we'll talk about later. So if you go into each question type with a tailored mindset of specific plan, you're not just guessing wildly. You're actually executing a strategy you've prepared beforehand. You maximize your efficiency, your effectiveness. You get more correct answers. Think of it like knowing your enemy, if you will. Understanding their tactics lets you prepare your counter moves, whether that's predicting a number or figuring out a subtle opinion.
That makes perfect sense. That mental prep is key. Okay, now for tip number 2. This one seems like such a minor detail, but oh boy, it's a sneaky trap that can cost you points if you overlook it. Check the instructions. Seriously, even if you've done practice tests 100 times, you cannot skip this step.
This is so critical. And it's something that many candidates, even really well-prepared ones, they often miss it in the rush. The instructions always vary slightly between tests, always. Even if it looks like the same task type you saw last time, you might just assume you know what's needed. But there are these specific little variations you absolutely have to watch out for.
Okay, what kind of subtle changes are we talking about here? Can you give us some really concrete examples?
Yeah, sure. One of the most common ones, and one that catches people out all the time, is the maximum number of words and or numbers allowed for an answer. You'll see instructions like write one word and or a number, or maybe no more than 2 words. You have to stick to that limit rigidly. For multiple choice questions, you need to quickly check if a letter option, ABC, can be used more than once, especially in matching tasks. And are you supposed to write the letter itself, ABC, as the answer, or the actual word or phrase from the option? That can vary too. But maybe the most crucial one, and the one people miss surprisingly often, especially in short answer questions, is this rule. Any word you take directly from the audio must stay exactly the same, unchanged. That means the exact word. The same form noun stays a noun, singular stays singular, same tense, same ending. You can't modify it at all.
Wow, that unchanged word rule sounds like a real tripwire. I mean, did you know that sometimes the difference between a whole band score, like going from a 6.5 to a 7.0, can actually depend on just 1 or 2 points lost because of these seemingly tiny mistakes in following instructions? Let's take that example we looked at, the college open day audio. The instructions were complete the notes below, write one word and or a number for each answer, right? And the title was evening events. How did those instructions affect an answer for, say, the question, new reading deck open by cutting the...
That's a perfect illustration of how these small details have huge consequences. For that specific question, the audio clearly mentioned the red ribbon being cut. Now, if your instruction says write one word and or a number, then red ribbon is obviously 2 words. So it's wrong. Only ribbon would be the correct answer in that case. Even though you heard red ribbon, the instruction overrides that. It's incredibly strict. Similarly, let's say there was a question about a street address like Community Hall at If the audio said something like 67 Main Road, the correct answer following that one word and or a number rule would be 67 Main. Just writing Main would be wrong because the question asks at, implying the specific location, which includes the number. You need both the number and the core street name.
Okay, that makes the one word and or number rule feel incredibly strict. You really have to police yourself. What about the unchanged word rule? Let's use that other example, the marine life lecture audio about rising water temperatures. How does that kind of precision play out there?
This is where IELTS really tests your ear for exactness, not just, getting the general idea. For instance, say a question is something like rate of teleost or bony fish. Now you might hear the audio say the movement of teleost or bony fish has slowed down. Okay, so you hear movement, but then maybe later the speaker clarifies saying they appear to swim at lower speeds. Now look at the blank in the question. It implies you need maybe a noun related to action or maybe even a verb if the grammar allows. If swim was the exact word used in the audio that fits the grammatical slot in the question sentence, then swim is the only correct answer. Even if you wrote movement, which you heard, or even if you thought move sounds grammatically okay, if move wasn't the exact word used in that context in the audio, it's incorrect. You absolutely must use the word precisely as it was spoken and ensure it fits the blank grammatically. It's testing your ability to pinpoint the exact piece of data.
So it's about being incredibly precise, like a linguistic detective with a magnifying glass searching for that exact fingerprint. This isn't just testing your vocabulary, it's testing your really nuanced understanding of grammar, of word forms, which honestly is a vital skill in any real-world situation where context and precise language really matter. Okay, so we get the test mechanics. We know we have to check the instructions carefully. Now, what does all this mean for actually boosting your score before the audio even starts playing? This brings us neatly to our third tip, speed read. And here's the slightly counterintuitive part. Most people think the listening test is all about your ears, but actually, your eyes can often be your most powerful tool.
That's absolutely spot on. The most valuable time you have in the IELTS listening test isn't always when you're actively listening. It's those precious moments, those seconds you get to read before the audio begins for each section. You'll hear these explicit prompts, like first you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4, or after a section, you now have half a minute to check your answers. You absolutely need to seize every single one of those moments and use them strategically.
But hang on, when it says check your answers, shouldn't I actually be, checking my answers from the section I just finished? Isn't that the point?
That's a really common thought, but it's actually a missed opportunity. You get dedicated time, a whole 10 minutes for the paper test, right at the very end, to transfer and check all your answers thoroughly. So those little pockets of time, the half a minute to check your answers, bits after each section, you should immediately repurpose that time. Use that precious time to look ahead. Read the questions for the next section that's coming up. Why? Because it allows you to prime your brain. Think about it like this. Your brain has
A limited capacity for processing information all at once. Cognitive load, right. By pre-reading and getting the handle on the questions before the audio plays, you effectively offload a big chunk of the mental work involved in just understanding the question itself. This frees up your cognitive resources, your brain power, to focus entirely on understanding the audio when it plays. Your brain becomes like a highly targeted receiver, listening specifically for the information it now knows it needs. It's about doing the reading work up front, so you're not trying to read, understand the question, and listen for the answer all at the same time. That's just too much.
That's incredibly insightful. It really is about managing your mental bandwidth, isn't it? Okay, so building directly on that speed reading foundation, our fourth tip is to take it a step further. Predict the answer. This is where you kind of become that linguistic detective again, making smart, educated guesses that can really pay off.
Exactly. The audio nearly always gives you some background information, some context about the situation or topic right before a section starts. You should use that context plus the questions themselves that you've just speed read to make predictions. Not just about the type of word you need, like is it a noun, a number, an adjective, but sometimes you can even make a reasonable guess about the specific answer itself. Doing this primes your mind and makes you actively listen for that specific piece of information rather than just passively waiting for something to jump out.
Okay, can you walk us through an example of this prediction process in action? Let's use that day trips on an island audio scenario again. How would we predict the answers for those questions?
All right, let's put on our detective hats. Imagine you're looking at the questions for the day trip section before the audio starts. Question 1 says, private boats with driver in Thund. Okay, straight away, your brain should be thinking, what kind of person or thing usually comes with a driver on a private boat?
Yeah.
You'd predict a noun, maybe a job title like guide or chef, or perhaps an amenity like refreshments or maybe cabin. This really narrows down what you're listening for.
Makes sense. Okay, what about predicting a number?
Right, look at question 2. Larger boats for up to passengers. The phrase up to and the word passengers practically screams number. And because it says larger boats, you'd expect a number significantly higher than for a small private boat, right? Maybe, I don't know, 20 or 40 or 50. And a really key prediction here, something to actively listen for, is similar sounding numbers. Test writers love throwing in pairs like 13 and 30 or 14 and 40 as distractors. So pre-thinking about that helps you listen more carefully.
Good point. And what about something like question 3? Trip includes stops at 2?
Well, the word to is your big clue there. It tells you immediately the answer must be a plural noun. So what are common places you stop on an island trip? Beaches, maybe bays, islands, waterfalls. You're already generating this mental checklist. When you hear one of them, it clicks much faster. Then for question 4, green, see that capital G. That strongly suggests you're looking for a proper noun, most likely the name of a place, like Green Beach or Green Valley, Green Island. You'd also mentally note that if it's a slightly unusual or difficult spelling, the speaker will probably spell it out for you.
It really sounds like this prediction process forces you to become an active listener, not just passively hoping to catch the answer. And what about the last couple in that example?
Exactly right. Active listening is key. For question 5, B by these giant marine mammals, that little word B right before the blank is a strong signal you need an adjective. And given the context, giant marine mammals, it's likely going to be a past participle ending in -ed, expressing a feeling like amazed, astounded, impressed, thrilled. And finally, question 6, opportunity. The blank comes right before the noun opportunity, so it's clearly looking for an adjective to describe it. Maybe a positive sort of advertising type word like fantastic, wonderful, amazing, or maybe something more specific about the opportunity itself like rare, unique, or seasonal.
And sure enough, when the audio actually played for those questions, the answers turned out to be guide, 40, waterfalls, green beach, amazed, and rare. So those predictions really do help confirm what you hear, don't they? They significantly boost your chances of catching the right answer. It genuinely turns what could be a passive listening exercise into an active search, which, as you said, is a powerful skill way beyond just passing this test. Okay, so you've done your speed reading, you've made your predictions. Now, our 5th tip is about a concrete action you can take that supports all that mental preparation. Highlight or underline keywords. This might seem like a really small, almost administrative thing to do, but it can be incredibly effective.
It really is. The simple act of physically underlining or highlighting the key words in the question makes them stand out visually. This helps not just when you're pre-reading, but also while the audio is actually playing. You can glance down and quickly reorient yourself. But more than that, there's something about the physical action itself, the movement of the pencil or the highlighter, that helps to kind of cement that keyword and the ideas connected to it in your mind. It's like creating a little mental anchor, a visual and tactile cue that helps sharpen your focus.
How does that work practically, though? I know some people take the test on paper, others do it on a computer now.
That's a good point. The principle is the same, but the tool changes slightly. If you're doing the paper-based test, you'll have a pencil, and that question paper is basically your workspace. You can underline, double underline, circle words, draw arrows, make little notes in the margin, whatever helps you. Remember, they collect the question paper at the end and destroy it, so don't be afraid to mark it up. Use it to help your brain organize the information. If you're taking the computer-delivered test, you'll still be given a pencil and paper for making notes, which is handy. And on the screen itself, there's a highlighter function. They'll show you how to use it before the test starts. So you can highlight keywords directly on the digital question. There's usually a notepad function too for typing quick notes. But whether you're physically underlining or digitally highlighting, the core purpose is identical. Help your brain focus on the crucial bits of information, those keywords that help you predict and listen out for the relevant details. It's especially useful, I find, for multiple choice questions where you need to quickly scan and compare the options while listening.
Okay, let's make that concrete. Take those Polynesian studies multiple choice questions we looked at. Which words would you personally focus on highlighting or underlining to get the most benefit?
Right, good example. So for a question like, which course will the student be taking next semester? And the options are A, astronomy, B, navigation, C, food gathering. I definitely highlight next semester. And the question stem, that's the key time constraint. And then I'd highlight the specific subject names in each option. Astronomy, navigation, food gathering. Just the act of highlighting those distinct names forces your brain to register them clearly and separately. Or maybe another one. What did Mary decide was the main reason for visiting Tonga? Options. A, she visited many relatives there. B, she spoke Tongan frequently with her mother. C, her relatives encouraged her to go. Here, I'd highlight decided and main reason in the question. Then in the options, I'd highlight the key difference. A, visited relatives. B, spoke Tongan. C, relatives encouraged. Seems simple, maybe even obvious, but this combination of a visual cue and a physical action creates a really powerful mental anchor. It helps you filter out the noise and home in on exactly what you need to listen for. It's about making your brain work smarter, definitely not just harder.
Now, our sixth tip. This one feels like it could be the master key, really, to unlocking success, not just in listening, but across all parts of the IELTS exam. Think of synonyms and parallel expressions. This is where the test really starts to gauge your true, flexible understanding of English, isn't it?
This is absolutely fundamental. You have to understand that IELTS isn't just throwing random questions at you. It's a very well-researched, carefully constructed assessment. It's specifically designed to accurately measure how well someone actually understands and can use English in a flexible way. And one of the main techniques it uses to do this, especially in listening and reading, is the deliberate use of synonyms and what we call parallel expressions. It directly tests your ability to grasp an idea when it's expressed one way in the question, and then recognize the same idea when it's expressed using different words or even different grammatical structures in the audio. It's definitely not about just matching exact keywords. It's about understanding the underlying concept.
Okay, just to be super clear, can you quickly define those two terms for us again? Synonyms and parallel expressions.
Sure thing. A synonym is pretty straightforward. It's just a word that has the same or very nearly the same meaning as another word, like beautiful and attractive, or car and automobile, reply and respond. Simple and straightforward. Easy enough. A parallel expression, or sometimes called a synonymous phrase, is a bit broader. It's when a group of words, two or more, has the same or nearly the same meaning as another group of words. So you're expressing the same core idea, but maybe rewriting the whole phrase. For example, instead of hearing the exact phrase small car from the question, the audio might say compact automobile. Or if the question mentions reply promptly, the audio might phrase it as respond rapidly. Same meaning, different words and structure.
Got it. That makes the distinction much clearer. So how does this actually play out in the listening test? Let's go back to that Polynesian studies audio we used for highlighting. How did the audio use these synonyms and parallel expressions instead of just repeating the exact keywords we might have highlighted?
Great question, because it happens constantly throughout the test. It's one of the main ways they check comprehension. So remember that question about the course next semester. One option was food gathering. In the audio, the speaker didn't necessarily say food gathering. They might have said something like, I'm interested in learning about traditional food sources and the hunting and gathering processes. See? Same idea how people got food, but expressed using a longer, more descriptive parallel phrase. Or, remember the question about why Mary visited Tonga? One option mentioned many relatives from Tonga visited. The audio might have described it differently, perhaps saying, I had lots of cousins and aunties coming and staying with us. Again, the core concept family visiting from Tonga is there, but the wording is completely different. Another classic one. If a question uses a concise term like media, the audio might expand on it, saying something like opportunities in print or on radio or television. It's the same concept of mass communication, just presented as a parallel expression listing examples.
Those are really clear examples, and you often hear this kind of paraphrasing for things like time frames or academic concepts too, right? Like abstract ideas.
Oh, absolutely, all the time.
Yep.
The question might say next semester, but the audio could phrase it as in the second half of the academic year. Or the concept of navigation might be explained descriptively, like understanding the way our ancestors found their way back and forth across the ocean. And if you were listening for the term postgraduate studies, the audio might refer to it more specifically, like planning to do a master's or a PhD. What's really fascinating here, I think, is how this directly tests your real-world comprehension skills. True understanding, genuine fluency goes way beyond just matching keywords. It's about grasping concepts, understanding meaning, no matter how it's phrased. This is basically critical thinking applied to language, and it's absolutely essential for doing well in IELTS, and frankly, for navigating any complex information you encounter in daily life.
Okay, fantastic. So we've laid the groundwork, we've prepped strategically before the audio even starts. Now let's move into navigating the audio itself while it's playing. Our 7th tip is all about staying on track. Focus and follow with your eyes and your ears. Think of your question paper almost like your internal GPS, guiding you through the spoken words.
This is such a fundamental rule, and it holds true almost universally in IELTS listening. With very, very few exceptions, the answers always come in the order the questions are written on the paper. This means the answer for question 6 will definitely come after you've heard the answer for question 5 and before you hear the answer for question 7. You can pretty much answer the questions sequentially as you hear the information unfold. This is a massive advantage that the test gives you, so you absolutely need to use it. Don't jump around.
That's a huge relief, actually, knowing you won't suddenly hear the answer for question 10 while you're still desperately listening for question 3. Yeah. But what about those transition moments, the very beginning and the very end of each audio section? How should we use that time effectively?
All right, good question. You need to stay alert right from the beginning during what we could call the intro time. This is the lead-in time at the start of each audio section. It's useful because it helps you tune your ear to the speaker's voices, their accents, their speed. And typically, the answer to the very first question in a section won't come right at the beginning of the audio. It's usually maybe 20 or 30 seconds in. So that gives you a little warm-up period. Conversely, you also need to train yourself to mentally switch off from the section you just finished and immediately redirect your attention to the next section during the outro time. That's the bit of speaking you often hear at the very end of an audio section, after you've heard the answer to the final question for that part. Critically, do not use this time to review the answers you just wrote down. Use it to prepare for what's coming next. Use it for speed reading the next set of questions, like we discussed in tip 3.
Okay, and how do you physically keep your place on the question paper as the audio is moving along, especially if the speakers are talking quickly or there's a lot of information?
That's where using signposts becomes really important. These are essentially visual cues on your question paper. They could be headings, subheadings, or any words that visually stand out, particularly proper nouns like names of people, places, dates, months, which are always capitalized. They can also be the key words that you yourself have highlighted or underlined using tip 5. Basically, a signpost is any word or feature on the page that helps you track where you are on the paper in relation to the part of the audio track that's currently playing. Following these signposts closely with your eyes will significantly help your ears follow the relevant information in the audio. And a practical technique, especially for the paper-based test, that many successful test takers use. Use the finger of your non-writing hand to physically point and track your place between these signposts on the question paper as you listen. It's a simple, active technique, but it creates this continuous mental and physical map of the audio as it unfolds, which really helps prevent you from getting lost or losing focus. It's a powerful skill, actually, beyond just tests. It teaches you how to build a mental outline of a conversation in real time.
That's a brilliant, very tactile way to stay anchored. I like that. Okay, so while you're doing that, tracking with your eyes and ears, our 8th tip acts like your immediate insurance policy, helping you avoid missing critical information. Focus on 2 questions at a time.
Yes, this is a really vital technique, I think, especially for managing those inevitable moments where maybe your mind wanders for a split second, or when the answers come really quickly one after another. The idea is simple. Once you've heard and written down the answer for one question, let's say it's question 6, you should immediately shift your primary focus to the next 2 questions coming up, so question 7 and 8. Always try to keep at least one eye, metaphorically speaking, on the question that's coming up after the immediate next one.
Why is that dual focus so important? Wouldn't that actually be more distracting, trying to keep track of 2 things at once?
It might seem counterintuitive, but it actually acts as a crucial buffer. Think about it. In a high-pressure test situation, if you happen to miss the answer for question 7, maybe your mind drifts or you just didn't catch it because you were already looking ahead at question 8 as well. You're much less likely to fall completely behind. You can quickly reorient yourself using question 8 as your anchor. It prevents you from that horrible feeling of missing one answer and then subsequently missing the next 2 or 3 because you're lost. It also prepares you better for those situations where answers might come very, very close together. Sometimes the gap between hearing the answer for Q7 and Q8 can be less than a second. Or, conversely, sometimes there might be unexpectedly long pauses or irrelevant conversation between answers. Focusing on 2 questions helps you bridge those gaps more easily. The signposts we just talked about in tip 7 become even more useful here because they help guide this dual focus and make it more manageable. Now, I'll admit, this technique definitely requires some practice to get comfortable with, but believe me, it is well worth doing.
It can save you from a momentary lapse of concentration, having disastrous consequences on your score. It's really about building resilience into your listening process in that high-pressure environment. It helps you manage uncertainty and stay just one step ahead of the audio. Think of it like always having a backup plan ready to go.
Right, always having that buffer. Okay, and while you're managing that intense focus, you absolutely need to be aware of those tricky beasts of the IELTS listening test, which brings us very neatly to our 9th tip. Beware of distractors.
Ah, yes, distractors. These are words or phrases that are intentionally put into the audio by the test writers. Their purpose is basically to lead you away from the correct answer if you're not listening carefully enough. Now, they're not there just to trick you unfairly. They're actually there to ensure you're understanding the full meaning and the intent of the language you hear, not just latching onto familiar sounds or isolated keywords. They really test your deeper comprehension.
Okay, so how do these distractors typically show up? What forms do they take in the audio?
Well, they can manifest in several common ways. Very often, especially in multiple choice questions, all of the different options, A, B, and C, might actually be mentioned somewhere in the audio recording. But crucially, only one of them will be the correct answer based on a specific detail or condition mentioned in the question stem. For example, going back to that question about the course beginning next semester, the audio might mention astronomy, navigation, and food gathering. But the speaker might say something like, well, we usually offer astronomy next semester, but actually, this year it's going to be navigation. We're planning to offer food gathering later in the year. And you see, all 3 options were mentioned, but only navigation correctly matches the specific next semester conditions stated in the question. You have to listen for that precise detail, that specific qualifier.
That's a classic one, yeah, where they mention everything, but only one actually fits the specific criteria. What about other, maybe more subtle forms of distractors? Are there other ways they try to, distract you?
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes the options themselves might contain information that is only partially true according to the audio. These are very sneaky. For instance, a question might be about why someone visited a place. The audio might state, well, my mom is Tongan, and actually I've only been there once when I was little. A distractor option might then say something like, she visits Tonga frequently to see her mother. Now, part of that is true, her mother is Tongan, but the visits frequently part is directly contradicted by the audio. Only been there once. That makes the whole option incorrect. You really have to listen for the nuances, not just grab onto keywords like Tongan or mother. And then there's another category, what we often call undermining words or qualifying phrases. These are words or short phrases that negate or significantly weaken a statement that was just made. Things like might, could, possibly, but, however, although probably not, were phrases like I toyed with the idea of, or I considered it but decided against it, or I don't think I have the necessary skills for that. If a speaker mentions an idea, That might correspond to an option, but then immediately follows it up with one of these undermining phrases. It's a strong signal that this idea is being dismissed, or is uncertain, or didn't happen. That makes the related option incorrect. It really forces you to understand the speaker's true stance or intention, not just the superficial words. This demands a real depth of comprehension, moving way beyond simply catching a single keyword. It's about understanding the full context, the speaker's attitude, which is a vital skill for anyone trying to navigate complex information accurately, whether it's news reports, business meetings, or academic lectures.
Okay, now we're shifting gears slightly, moving into the phase of refining your answers and dealing with some practicalities, mostly after you've done the main listening part. Our 10th tip is a rule that seems so basic, yet it has really big consequences for your score. Spelling matters. And it's worth repeating. Often, the difference between getting the band score you need, say a 6.5 versus a 7.0, can literally hinge on just 1 or 2 points lost simply because of a spelling mistake. That's why this isn't just about basic accuracy, it's a really strategic point saver.
It absolutely, unequivocally does matter. If an answer you write down is not spelled correctly, it is marked as wrong. End of story. It's as simple and as brutal as that. Now, the good news, to offer some reassurance, is that the answers in IELTS listening questions are almost always everyday vocabulary words. They'll be words that, frankly, someone aiming for a higher band score would be expected to know how to spell correctly. Words like library or environment or accommodation, not incredibly obscure or technical jargon.
But what about names? Names of people or places can be notoriously tricky to spell, even common ones sometimes.
That's a very fair point. And the test writers know this. So if the answer to a question is a person's name, like a surname, or the name of a specific place, like a street name or a town, that might have an unusual or non-obvious spelling, you will almost always hear it spelled out letter by letter in the audio recording itself. For example, you might hear the speaker say, okay, the address is Riverleigh Street. That's Riverleigh Street. So in that case, your job is just to accurately write down the letters you hear spelled out. It's also really important to pay attention to capitalization. Always use a capital letter for the beginning of proper nouns, names of people, places, streets, months, days of the week. For instance, Main Road needs capitals. August needs a capital. And if you encounter things like postcodes, especially British ones, which are common in the test, remember they often include both letters and numbers, like SW103P, for example. You need to get both the letters and numbers right.
Okay, so let's say you're listening, you think you hear the answer, but you're not entirely sure about the spelling in that moment. What's the best strategy? Should you just stop and try to figure it out right then and there?
No, definitely not. Don't get bogged down during the listening phase. If you're unsure of a spelling while the audio is playing, the best thing to do is quickly jot down what you think it might be, or even just a phonetic guess how it sounds. Just get something written down quickly so you don't miss the next answer. Then use that dedicated time at the very end of the test, the 10-minute transfer time you get in the paper-based test, or the review time you have in the computer-delivered test, to specifically go back and check your spelling. If you're still unsure, maybe write it down a couple of different ways on your scrap paper and see which one looks right. Trust your gut feeling. Very often, your first instinct about spelling is actually the correct one, so don't overthink it too much either. But definitely do pay attention to spelling. Proofread all your answers rigorously before you finalize them. It's such a shame to lose a point just because of a simple spelling mistake. It's like low-hanging fruit for improving your score. It's a stark reminder that even fundamental accuracy, that attention to detail, can be the absolute deciding factor in a high-stakes assessment like this.
Right. And following logically from spelling, our 11th tip is about how grammar itself can be a kind of silent clue giver, almost acting like another tool for our linguistic detective. Check grammar.
Yes, this is a really powerful one, and I think it often flies under the radar for a lot of test takers who are just focused on catching the words. The actual grammatical structures used within the questions themselves, particularly things like the articles a, an, and the, and also whether nouns are expected to be singular or plural. These can act as crucial indicators, giving you hints about the correct form of the answer you should be listening for.
Can you give us a concrete example where the grammar in the question is basically a dead giveaway for the answer form? That accommodation options audio we analyzed had some really good ones, didn't it?
It certainly did. Okay, for instance, imagine a question reads, all rooms are furnished with a day. Now, the crucial clue there is that indefinite article a. A immediately tells you that the missing word must be a singular countable noun. It has to be. So if the audio then mentioned things like bedding, which is uncountable, or cupboards, which is plural, but also mentioned a bed, you know instantly that bed has to be the correct answer because only bed fits the grammatical requirement set by A. Or take another example. If a question says, we provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. Our students love the day. Now, the audio might mention both meal, singular, and meals, plural. But the context here, breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week, strongly implies multiple meals. And the phrase, love the day, suggests a general noun. So meals, plural, would be the logical and grammatically fitting answer. One more. Let's say we cater for anyone with special day. Notice the absence of A before the word special. This usually signals that the missing word needs to be either a plural noun or an uncountable noun. So if the audio talks about a special diet, singular, but also mentions accommodating special diets, plural, then diets would be the correct fit for the question's grammatical structure. Grammar isn't just about being correct after the fact. It acts as a predictive tool while you listen and a checking tool afterwards.
That's brilliant. It really is like the grammar provides the skeleton of the sentence, giving you these vital structural clues about what kind of word needs to fit in the gap. So it makes sense that at the end of the test, during that review time, it's a really good idea to read back through all your answers, specifically checking the grammar, especially plurals, singulars, and how they fit with articles like a or they. This can either confirm your answer or maybe make you rethink it.
Exactly. It's a way to use the structure of the language itself to confirm your comprehension, even if you are slightly unsure when listening.
Okay, our 12th tip is a very practical one, focused on managing the flow of information during the test, especially when you're feeling under pressure. Write notes. Think of this as creating a cognitive offload system for your brain, freeing up mental space.
It's incredibly helpful, yeah. Whether you're doing the paper-based test or the computer-delivered one, having an efficient system for jotting down notes is really crucial for keeping up. As we said in the paper-based test, you can write directly all over the question booklet. It's effectively your scratch pad. Use it. For the computer-delivered IELTS, you are always provided with a pencil and paper specifically for making notes. Don't forget to use it. Now, while typing your answers directly onto the screen is often easier and quicker for many people for single words, some test takers find it much more efficient to quickly jot down things like long numbers, phone numbers, credit card numbers, postcodes on the paper first. It can simply be faster and less error-prone to physically write down a string of 7 or 8 digits than to try and type them accurately while simultaneously listening to the next part of the audio.
That makes sense for numbers. What about longer answers, though? Like if the answer is the name of a university department or maybe a 2 or 3 word phrase, should you try to write or type that out in full while the audio is still playing?
That's where a smart note-taking strategy really comes into play. If an answer is quite long, or maybe if you're not 100% sure of the exact spelling on the fly, it can be really beneficial to either type in or quickly write down just a short form or an abbreviation first. For example, if the answer you hear is clearly psychology department, you might just quickly type or write psych-dept, or maybe even just psych-t. Or if the answer is environmental studies, you jot down NV studies, or ES. This lets you capture the core information very quickly without getting bogged down in typing or writing out the full long phrase, and crucially, without worrying about perfect spelling in that exact moment. Getting bogged down could easily make you miss the next piece of critical information. You can then go back during that dedicated transfer time or review time at the end of the test and fill in the complete, correctly spelled answer calmly. This really raises an important point about cognitive efficiency under pressure, doesn't it? It's about strategically offloading some of that immediate mental strain onto your physical notes, allowing your primary focus to remain squarely on the unfolding audio stream. It's exactly how effective note-takers manage to capture key information in fast-paced meetings or complex lectures.
That's a really smart way to manage the pressure and keep your focus where it needs to be on the listening. And speaking of capturing every possible point, our 13th tip is perhaps the most straightforward way to guarantee you're not needlessly leaving points on the table. Leave no blanks.
This is absolutely non-negotiable. A golden rule, really. There is no penalty whatsoever for getting an answer wrong in the IELTS listening test. No points are deducted for incorrect answers. A blank answer, however, scores exactly 0 every time. This means that even a complete guess, or better yet, a calculated guess based on your predictions or what you vaguely remember hearing, always has some chance of being correct, whereas a blank answer has literally 0 chance. You have absolutely nothing to lose by guessing and potentially a crucial point to gain.
And what's the real impact of just a single question, though? Does 1 point truly make that much difference in your final band score?
It absolutely can, yes. The thresholds between the different band scores can often be incredibly narrow. Sometimes the difference between, say, a band 6.5 and the band 7.0 that you need might hinge on just one additional correct answer across the whole test. That single point could literally be the difference between getting into your desired university program or not, or meeting an immigration requirement or not. Therefore, making an intelligent guess, or even just a lucky guess, for any question you might have missed or left blank while the audio was playing, could genuinely be the decisive factor in reaching your target score. So the process should be: at the very end of the test, after you checked your spelling, tip 10, and your grammar, tip 11, go back one last time and make absolutely sure you have filled in every single blank space on your answer sheet or screen. Even if you just pick a random letter for a multiple choice question you missed, or write down any words you recall hearing that seems to fit the context, it offers you a non-zero probability of gaining that extra point. It really highlights the strategic aspect of test taking, doesn't it? It's not just about demonstrating what you know, it's also about how you play the game. Maximizing every single probability, no matter how small it seems, can make a significant difference to your final outcome. Honestly, leaving a blank is like leaving free money on the table. Don't do it.
Absolutely. Don't leave points behind. Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground on what to do in the test and immediately after. But now let's zoom out a bit for our 14th tip. This one might sound obvious, but the critical difference here is about efficient and deliberate preparation before you even get to test day. Practice.
You're right, it does sound like common sense, doesn't it? Just practice more. But knowing how to practice efficiently and effectively is actually a skill in itself. Doing it right will save you time and energy and maximize your results leading up to the test. And the single most effective way to be properly prepared for IELTS listening is to practice extensively, specifically using authentic past tests and audio materials.
Why is that authentic part so important? Can't I just, listen to any English podcast or news broadcast for practice?
Well, listening to general English is definitely helpful for improving your overall skills, absolutely. But using authentic IELTS materials for dedicated practice is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, they accurately simulate the real test environment. This includes getting used to the specific types of questions, the format of the test paper or screen, the timing constraints, and really importantly, the range of voices and accents you'll encounter. These are typically standard British, Australian, New Zealand, American, or Canadian accents, but hearing them in the test context is key. This familiarity helps reduce anxiety on test day and build your confidence because you know exactly what to expect. Secondly, when you do practice tests, it's invaluable to get your answers checked accurately. Ideally, you'd get feedback from someone experienced, maybe a native speaker friend, a tutor, or someone who knows the IELTS test well. This ensures you get an accurate assessment of your performance and, more importantly, helps you identify your specific weaknesses. You need to understand why you made a particular mistake, not just that you got it wrong. This allows you to target your future practice much more effectively.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of learning any skill, practice isn't just about mindless repetition. It's about deliberate, informed repetition. It's about building the right kind of muscle memory, consciously refining your strategies based on genuine feedback, and that's what truly accelerates mastery, whether it's for a test or anything else.
Deliberate practice.
Got it. And finally, our 15th tip. This is a set of things that are, well, not strictly IELTS specific, but they are absolutely crucially important. They're the foundational elements you need for peak performance on the day. Have the basics covered.
Yes, it's so easy to get completely consumed by all the specific strategies, the technical details, the question types for the IELTS test. But really effective preparation requires effort in other more fundamental ways too. These are the underlying factors that directly impact your cognitive function, your ability to concentrate, to focus, to recall information quickly, and just your overall performance when you're under pressure. Your brain, quite simply, works much better when it's well looked after.
Okay, so what are these foundational elements that we sometimes, maybe often overlook when we're frantically studying for a big test?
Well, they include the absolute importance of fundamental physical well-being. Things like eating reasonably well-balanced meals in the days leading up, staying properly hydrated. Dehydration really impacts focus, and critically, getting adequate rest and sleep, especially the night before. Trying to perform at your cognitive peak on just 3 hours of sleep, fueled only by coffee and sugar. That's pretty much a recipe for underperforming no matter how much you've studied. Then, on test day itself, a simple but really critical tip. Arrive at the test center early. Give yourself plenty of time. This helps you avoid any last-minute stress, frantic searching for the room, or rushing, all of which can immediately trigger your body's stress response and really hinder your concentration before you even start. Arriving early allowed you to feel calm,
settled, find your seat, and just be mentally prepared before the clock starts ticking. And finally, one more thing. Try to constantly immerse yourself in English in the days immediately leading up to the test. This means actively listening to English, maybe podcasts like this one, watching English language movies or TV shows without subtitles if possible, listening to the news in English, reading English articles or books. This just helps keep your ear tuned to the sounds and rhythm of the language and minimizes that initial shock of hearing native speakers talking at natural, sometimes fast test speed. All of these seemingly simple, almost common sense points. They matter immensely because a well-rested, calm, hydrated, and linguistically primed mind is far, far better equipped to successfully apply all the specific strategies and techniques we've spent this whole deep dive discussing. It really raises that important question about the holistic nature of performance, doesn't it? Your physical and mental state are like the foundational operating system for all the specific skills and software you're trying to run. Neglecting that foundation is like trying to run a high-performance program on an old, outdated, struggling machine. It just won't work optimally.
Wow, okay. We have covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive. Seriously, 15 high-impact tips. We went from understanding the basic test mechanics and the absolute non-negotiable necessity of checking those instructions, to strategically preparing before you listen, speed reading, predicting answers, highlighting keywords, thinking about synonyms, then navigating the audio itself, following along, focusing on 2 questions, watching out for those sneaky distractors, and finally, refining everything afterwards, checking spelling, using grammar as a clue, taking smart notes, making sure you leave no blanks. And we rounded it all out with the importance of consistent, authentic practice and just having all those basic needs covered for test day, because your body and your mind really are your most important tools. These 15 tips, they aren't just about acing the IELTS listening test, they genuinely feel like powerful tools for enhancing your general listening and comprehension skills in pretty much any situation where information is coming at you fast.
That really is the core message, I think. Success in IELTS listening, it's a multifaceted thing. It's not just one magic bullet. It beautifully combines understanding the mechanics of the test, applying strategic pre-listening preparation, maintaining focused navigation while the audio plays, carrying out meticulous post-listening refinement of your answers, and underpinning it all, that holistic personal well-being. It really reinforces that core belief we have here, that knowledge information, it's most valuable when it's not just acquired, but when it's truly understood and then effectively applied. That's the very essence of genuine learning, isn't it?
Absolutely. So as you, our listener, reflect on these 15 powerful tips we've explored today, maybe take a moment to consider which one feels like your immediate aha moment. Which single tip really resonated with you? How might implementing just that one impactful change potentially transform not only your next practice listening test, but perhaps any situation where you need to truly absorb and understand information effectively? Maybe it was the idea of prediction or using grammar as a clue or simply remembering to always check those instructions. Whatever it is, take that insight, that aha moment, and really try to run with it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into IELTS listening mastery. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep listening, and we'll be back soon with another shortcut to being well informed. Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine standing at the edge of a really high stakes English language test. Every single word matters, and you only get one chance, just one, to hear it. Sounds pretty intense, doesn't it?
It really does. The pressure's definitely on.
Today, we're not just skimming the surface, we're diving deep into the IELTS listening test. It's such a crucial hurdle for so many people, for uni, for jobs, all around the world.
Absolutely. It opens a lot of doors.
So our mission for you, our listener, is to sort of untangle all its complexities. We want to pull out the most important insights from a really detailed breakdown of the test itself. Think of it as arming you with understanding that goes way beyond just a basic study guide.
Yeah, getting into the real mechanics of it.
Exactly. Consider this your strategic shortcut to truly understanding what the IELTS listening test demands. We've got some surprising facts, I think, and definitely some practical strategies. We'll explore its structure, the specific types of questions you'll face, and those subtle little traps they set to test your precision. They're quite clever, actually.
They really are. And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is the sophisticated way this test checks your listening. It's not just, did you hear the word?
Right.
It's much deeper. Can you grasp the underlying meaning, the speaker's intention, those crucial little details? We'll connect the dots between how the test is put together, meticulously structured, and why certain ways of tackling it are so critical for getting the score you need.
Yeah.
Which brings up that big question, the one I think a lot of test takers wrestle with. How can you genuinely master a listening test when, for a fact, you only get one shot at the audio?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. It takes more than just good English. You need a strategic mindset, a plan.
And that's exactly the core of the challenge we're tackling today. We want to equip you not just with answers, but with actionable strategies to face it head on. So let's lay the groundwork first. Understanding the basic landscape of this test.
Okay.
The fundamentals. You're looking at a total duration of 30 minutes. In that time, you've got to answer 40 questions.
Feels like a sprint, doesn't it? 30 minutes, 40 questions.
It really does. An intense burst of focused listening. But those 40 questions, they aren't just thrown at you randomly. The test is carefully divided into 4 distinct sections.
Right. 10 questions in each section.
10 in each. And to keep you on your toes, you'll encounter 6 different question types scattered across these sections.
So a mix of consistency and structure, but variety in the tasks themselves.
Exactly. It's a blend.
And understanding those 4 sections, their distinct nature is, well, it's often underestimated in preparation, I find. Think of it like climbing a hill, maybe. A gradual increase in difficulty. Section 1, for instance, that typically involves a conversation. 2 people talking in an everyday social context.
Okay, like making plans or asking for information.
Precisely. Booking travel, joining a gym, asking about local services, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's usually the most straightforward part.
So designed to ease you in a bit.
I think so, yes. The language is generally pretty clear, direct. It's a really crucial section to score well on, build that early confidence.
Right. Get those points in the bag early. Okay, so after section 1,
then you move into section 2. The dynamic shifts a little. Here, you'll usually hear just one person speaking.
a monologue.
Exactly, a monologue, but still in an everyday social context. So it could be, say, a park ranger giving a tour.
Oh, right. Or someone explaining how to use a new library service.
Perfect example. Or maybe a community center person talking about new facilities.
Yeah.
The key difference from section 1 is you're following one person's train of thought. Often more descriptive language, less back and forth.
Gotcha. So from dialogue to monologue, but still fairly grounded. What about section 3?
Section 3, that's where you see a significant jump, both in the number of speakers and the context.
Okay, how many speakers?
Usually 2 or 3 people. And the setting shifts decisively to academic or educational.
Like university students.
Very often, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe students discussing an assignment, maybe planning a presentation together, perhaps even talking with their tutor or professor.
So the language gets more academic here.
Definitely. More academic vocabulary. And you often need to track multiple viewpoints on the same topic. Who agrees, who disagrees, who's suggesting what.
Okay, so you're not just pulling out facts, but maybe tracking an argument or a discussion.
Precisely. Which leads us straight into section 4. This is, it's undoubtedly where the academic intensity peaks.
The final boss.
Sort of. Here, you get one person again, another monologue, but on a much more complex academic subject.
Like a mini lecture.
Exactly like a mini lecture. Could be on anything ancient history, marine biology, economic trends.
Yeah. Wow, okay. Do you need to know about these topics beforehand?
Absolutely not. That's the good news. The test isn't checking your subject knowledge. It's purely about whether you can follow complex, sustained academic talk in English.
Phew, that's a relief.
It is. But the vocabulary in section 4 is undeniably the most challenging. It demands the highest level of listening comprehension, really following a detailed argument from start to finish.
So that progression, social chat, social monologue, academic discussion, academic lecture, it's all deliberate.
Very intentional. It mirrors the kind of listening you'd actually do in an English-speaking university or maybe a professional setting.
Makes sense.
And here's where we hit that really crucial point again, the listening conditions that apply across all these sections. The biggest one, the one that defines the whole experience.
You only hear it once.
You only hear the recordings once. Let that really sink in, just once.
No pause button, no rewind.
None. If you miss something, it's gone. It demands intense, sustained focus, almost surgical concentration from the very first second.
It's not passive listening at all.
Not even close. It's active processing, constantly anticipating, constantly filtering.
And that single playback thing is exactly why every second you get before the audio starts is so incredibly valuable. I'll definitely dig into that pre-listening strategy.
Oh, absolutely vital.
What else? What other conditions?
Well, accents. You need to be ready for a range of English accents.
Not just British or American.
No, definitely not. They ensure variety.
So you might hear British, American, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand accents, maybe others too.
So you can't just rely on being used to one type of English.
You need adaptability, familiarity with different pronunciations, different intonation patterns. It reflects the global nature of English.
Okay, that sounds challenging.
It can be. But here's a surprising little fact that often helps people relax a bit. While the accents vary, the recordings themselves are sometimes described as unnatural or even kind of fake.
Fake? How?
It sounds weird, I know, but what it means is that they are exceptionally clear.
Ah, okay, so not like real-life mumbled conversation.
Exactly. It's not like trying to understand someone talking quickly in a noisy cafe. The clarity is deliberate. It's designed so you can distinguish every word and phrase without struggling with the sound itself.
So you can focus your energy on understanding the meaning?
Precisely. It removes one layer of difficulty, the acoustic ambiguity, which is actually a big advantage for you, the listener, even if it doesn't sound perfectly natural.
That's actually a really important insight. It simplifies the hearing part, lets you focus on the thinking part. Okay, practical stuff now. How do you actually record your answers? Does it differ?
It differs significantly, depending on whether you take the paper-based test or the computer-delivered one.
Okay, let's start with paper, the traditional way.
Right. On the paper test, as you listen, you write your answers directly into the question booklet. Think of this as your rough notes.
Just jotting them down quickly.
Exactly. But then the crucial step comes after all the audio is finished. You get an extra 10 minutes.
10 minutes just for transferring answers?
Yes. Specifically, to carefully copy all your answers from that question booklet onto a separate official answer sheet.
And that transfer needs to be careful, I imagine.
Extremely careful. Any mistakes here, a misspelling, writing an answer in the wrong numbered space, even handwriting that the examiner can't read clearly, that will cost you points.
Wow. So even if you heard it right, you could lose the point right at the end.
Absolutely. It's a final hurdle where tiny details really matter. Precision again.
Okay. What about the computer-delivered test then? How's that different?
It's much more streamlined, really. You type your answers directly into the system as you listen.
So no separate transfer time?
Nope. That whole 10-minute transfer step is gone, which can definitely reduce anxiety for some people, especially if you worry about messy handwriting or making a copying error.
I can see that being a plus. Do you get any time to check at the end?
You do. You get 2 minutes at the very end to quickly review your answers on the screen.
But you can't re-listen or anything?
No, the audio is still only played once. So those 2 minutes are really just for spotting typos, making sure you haven't missed a question entirely, or correcting an obvious spelling mistake you notice.
So it really reinforces that pressure to get it right the first time, either way.
It absolutely does. Which brings us back to what the test is really assessing. It's clearly not just about hearing the words.
Right. It's about what you do with them.
Exactly. How
Yeah.
you process them, interpret them. They're looking at your ability to listen for several key things.
Like what specifically?
Okay, so main ideas. Can you get the gist, the overall point? Detailed information. Can you pick out specific facts, names, numbers, dates,
So specific?
opinions, and attitudes? Can you figure out how the speaker feels, what their viewpoint is, even if they don't state it directly?
Reading between the lines a bit.
Sometimes, yes. Also, the purpose, why is the speaker saying this? What are they trying to achieve?
Okay.
And finally, the development of ideas. Can you follow how an argument builds or how a story unfolds step by step?
Wow. That's a lot more than just listening. It's deep comprehension.
It's a very comprehensive assessment of your real-time interpretive listening skills.
And when it comes to scoring, the precision needed is, well, it's pretty demanding, isn't it?
It really is. Let's look at the benchmarks. If you need an IELTS band 6, maybe for vocational study or some visas,
Okay.
you need at least 23 points correct out of the 40 questions.
23 out of 40. Okay. What about band 7? That's a common one for university entry.
Right. For band 7, that jumps quite a bit. You need at least 30 points out of 40.
30, so only 10 mistakes allowed.
Exactly. And if you're aiming high, for band 8, often needed for postgraduate courses or professional registration,
Yeah.
you need to hit at least 35 points out of 40.
35. That's only 5 errors allowed across the entire test.
Precisely. And the implication of those numbers is stark. It highlights why nailing the details and practicing consistently is absolutely non-negotiable, especially for those top bands.
The margin for error is tiny.
Extremely narrow. Think about it. Getting 34 answers right, that's a great score, but it's not a band 8. You need that 35th point.
That one single point could literally be the difference between getting into your dream uni or not.
or getting that visa or that professional license. It's a clear message. You have to be meticulous. You have to be accurate.
And that narrow margin is exactly why understanding each question type and the little traps hidden within them is so vital.
Couldn't agree more. It's not just general listening. It's targeted listening for exactly what's needed, often amidst very clever distractors.
Which brings us perfectly to our next big section, really diving into each of those 6 question types in detail. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty of each format, there's some general advice, right? Something crucial that applies across the board.
Yes, absolutely. It's about that time before the audio starts for each section.
The pre-listening time.
Exactly. You always get a little bit of time, maybe 30 seconds, sometimes a bit more, to look at the questions for the upcoming section before you hear the recording.
And this isn't just a chance to catch your breath.
Definitely not. It's arguably one of the most important strategic windows in the entire test. It's your chance to orient yourself, to predict what's coming, to figure out what kind of information you need to be listening for.
So using that time effectively gives you a tactical advantage.
A huge one. During that pre-listening time, you should be actively reading the questions, underlining keywords in the questions themselves,
Okay.
and trying to anticipate the type of answer required. Am I listening for a name, a number, a date, a place, a reason, an object?
So you're kind of priming your brain.
Precisely. You're setting your mental radar. It reduces the cognitive load when you're actually listening because you're already partly focused. Makes you less likely to be caught off guard by distractors too.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Right, let's kick things off with question type 1 then. This is the note, form, table, or flowchart completion.
Right. These often appear in sections 1 and 2, and they're generally seen as, well, among the more straightforward types.
Good place to start then. What's the task?
Your job is basically to fill in the gaps. You'll see a set of notes or a form someone's filling out, or a table with missing info, or maybe a flowchart showing steps in a process. You fill in those gaps using words or numbers you hear in the audio.
Okay, sounds simple enough, but I bet there's a catch.
The biggest catch and the most critical instruction to watch is the word limit.
Ah, yes. Like no more than 2 words and/or a number.
Exactly that kind of instruction.
Yeah.
And you must understand precisely what that means. Getting it wrong, even by 1 word, means 0 points for that answer.
Okay, break that down. No more than 2 words and/or a number. What fits?
All right, 1 word is fine. Table, Smith. 2 words. Studio apartment, main library. 1 word and a number. $3 if you read the numeral 3, July 16th. 7 million.
Okay. Numeral plus word counts as number plus word.
Correct. 2 words and a number. 3 red flowers, if 3 is a word. 12 male geese. And of course, just a single number. 7, 7123.
Well, what doesn't fit? Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say the answer is the number 7100. If you wrote 7100 using the numeral 7, that would be 1 number and 2 words. 100. If the limit was no more than 1 word and or a number, that would be wrong. You'd likely just need to write 7100.
Got it. So you have to be super careful counting. Any other rules for these completion tasks?
Yes, a really helpful one. IELTS never tests contractions as answers.
Never. So the answer won't be a clock or don't.
Never. If you hear a contraction, it might be part of the conversation, but it won't be the word you need to write down in the gap. It might even be a distractor for the full phrase, like hearing don't when the answer is do not, so that's rare too. Usually the answer is just a different word altogether.
Okay, that's good to know. What about hyphenated words, like state of the art?
Hyphenated words like coworker, round trip, or well-being count as a single word.
1 word. Got it. Okay, let's make this concrete. Can we walk through an example?
Definitely. Let's imagine a customer calling a company, maybe Jungle Books, about some books that haven't arrived. You see a form on your question paper with gaps for things like last name, address, postcode, book titles, status, delivery date, tracking number.
Okay, so in my pre-listening time, I'd scan that form, see I need a name and address, etc.
Exactly. You're prepping your brain. Then the audio starts. For the last name, the customer might say, it's Murray. That's M-U-R-R-A-Y. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. M-U-R-R-A-Y.
Yeah.
It's A-Y at the end.
Ah, the classic spelling distractor.
Yeah.
They give one, then correct it.
Very common. You have to listen for the final confirmed version. Same for the address. Maybe they say Adams Street, A-D-A-M, then clarify, oh no, A-D-A-M-S Adams with an S.
Gotta catch that S. Okay. Postcode.
Usually straightforward numbers.
Yeah.
254-837. Not many tricks there usually.
Right.
Book names. Maybe you hear plant science and perfect green. Both 2 words fit the limit.
What about distractors here?
They might mention another book like, oh, I also ordered King of 7, but that one arrived okay.
So King of Seven is mentioned, but it's not one of the undelivered books.
Right. Or maybe it is undelivered, but it's 3 words, exceeding a no more than 2 words limit. So it can't be the answer for that specific gap.
Clever. Okay, status.
You might hear the agent say, okay, I see them here. They're currently in transit. They might add, that means they're on their way to you. The synonym confirms the meaning.
Delivery date. Maybe September 13th?
Yes. And you usually have flexibility here. Writing 13th, or set 13 is generally fine as long as the core information is right.
And tracking number.
They'll give the number, say 739-316-590. A possible distractor could be mentioning the website, like you can track it at junglebooks.com using this number.
So the website isn't the number itself.
Exactly. You need the number that goes into the website. Listen for what the question's actually asking for.
So these completion types, especially early on, are really about careful listening for specifics and dodging those distractors.
That's it, exactly. Nailing these is crucial because they are often the easiest marks to get. Distractors are everywhere in IELTS. Listening synonyms, similar sounds, partial info. Learning to spot and ignore them is fundamental. Listen for certainty.
Okay, moving on to question type 2, multiple choice. Now these feel different, more reading involved.
They are different and often significantly more challenging in listening compared to reading. Why? Because you're juggling 2 demanding tasks at once.
Listening intently.
And simultaneously reading, processing, and comparing several written options.
That sounds like a recipe for overload.
It can be. The absolute key is to prioritize the listening. Your eyes should be scanning the options quickly, but your main focus has to be on understanding the audio stream.
So use the pre-listening time wisely again.
Absolutely vital here. Read the question stem and read all the answer options, A, B, C, maybe D. Get a quick sense of what each option represents. Underline keywords in the options too, if it helps.
And sometimes you have to choose more than one answer.
Yes, always check the instructions. I'd say choose 2 all letters, AE, or something similar. Don't miss that. Multiple choice tests your detailed understanding of specific points, or sometimes the main idea. And often, it involves inference.
Let's try an example. Maybe that customer is back, asking about a specific book, botanical varieties. They want to know about the format.
Okay, so the options might be A, paperback, B, hardcover, C, ebook.
And in the audio.
You'll almost certainly hear all 3 mentioned.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
So how do you know which one is right?
Through nuance and inference. The customer might say something like, oh, I really don't like ebooks, find them hard to read. Eliminate C. And paperbacks are okay. Cheaper, of course. But for a reference book like this, I think the hardcover is probably worth the extra, isn't it? It'll last longer.
Ah, so they don't explicitly say, I want the hardcover.
Exactly. They express a dislike for ebooks, weigh the pros and cons of paperback versus hardcover, and imply a preference for hardcover based on longevity and value, even though it costs more. You have to infer the answer is B, hardcover.
Okay, that requires really careful listening to the reasoning. What about the addition? Options: A, first, B, second, C, third.
Similar challenge. Maybe the customer mentions, my professor said I should get the most up-to-date edition if possible, but the second edition would probably do.
So second edition is mentioned as acceptable.
Yes. But then the bookstore assistant says, right, well, this one here is the latest edition. It's actually the 3rd printing.
So you need to connect latest with third, even though second was mentioned as a possibility.
Precisely. And the assistant might use pronouns like this one, so you need to track what this one refers back to, the 3rd edition they're holding or discussing.
So synonyms, latest for third, paraphrasing, and inference are key here.
Absolutely central. The correct answer is rarely stated using the exact words in the option. You have to work it out from implications, context, maybe even the speaker's tone sometimes. And remember, all options will likely be heard, making it even trickier. It's a true test of comprehension, not just matching words.
Definitely sounds tougher. Okay, let's shift gears. Question type 3, short answer questions.
Right. These look simple on the page. A question, then a blank line for your answer. But the difficulty can ramp up, especially in later sections.
What's the core task?
Answer the question using a limited number of words, and crucially, those words must be taken directly from the audio recording.
Directly. No changing the words at all.
None. No paraphrasing, no using synonyms, even if they mean exactly the same thing. You lift the words straight from what you hear.
And there's a word limit again.
Always. Usually something like no more than 2 words. And generally, this type doesn't involve numbers, just words.
What else?
Spelling is critical. Get the word right, but spell it wrong, and it's marked incorrect.
Ouch. Precision again.
And same rules as before.
Contractions aren't tested as answers. Hyphenated words count as one word.
So pre-listening strategy.
Read the questions carefully. Anticipate the type of information you're listening for. If the question is, students should consider their own blank, you're listening specifically for what aspect of themselves they should consider.
Okay, let's try an example. Maybe a discussion about choosing a career. Question. When self-assessing, students should consider their own. What might the audio say?
The speaker might list several things. It's vital to think about your own key values and also your natural abilities.
So the answers could be key values or natural abilities.
Yes. And notice the plurals. If you write key value or natural ability, it's wrong. You need the exact form heard.
Ah, plurals matter. What about distractors?
The speaker might mention specific skills, like maybe you're a great public speaker or a good communicator. But if you try to put public speaker into the sentence, students should consider their own public speaker, it doesn't fit dramatically.
So the answer has to make sense in the sentence.
Grammatical fit is your final check. It must sound right when you read the question with your answer inserted.
Okay. What about another example? Essential needs in a job include.
You might hear things like nipple cleanses. Factors like job location are obviously key. And having a consistent salary is essential for most people, alongside maybe having a clear job title.
So job location, consistent salary, job title could all be answers.
Depending on the specific question and gap, yes. Distractors might be things mentioned as alternatives, like unlike freelance work where income varies. Freelance work is mentioned, but contrasted with the essential need of a consistent salary.
And just writing title instead of job title might be wrong.
It likely would be if the audio used job title and the question required that level of specificity to make sense. You need the exact phrasing that fits.
You mentioned earlier that IELTS focuses on content words. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Content words are the ones carrying the main meaning nouns, like values, location. Verbs, consider, include. Adjectives, key, natural, consistent. Adverbs. These are what usually form the answers.
And function words.
Those are the grammar words prepositions. In, on, of. Articles, a, the, conjunctions, and but. You're almost never tested on these directly. They're the glue, but the meaning is in the content words.
So focusing your listening on those nouns, verbs, adjectives helps cut through the noise.
It helps you filter for the core information, yes. For instance, aspects of an attractive company often include. You're listening for noun phrases.
Like employee benefits or growth opportunities.
Exactly. The audio might mention related ideas like good rates of pay or being able to work from home or having a future. But if the specific phrases used that fit the gaps are employee benefits and growth opportunities, those are your answers.
So for short answers, exact words, word limit, spelling, grammar fit, and focus on content words.
That sums it up perfectly. Surgical accuracy is the name of the game.
All right, question type 4, matching. This one looks visually different on the page, doesn't it?
It does, especially on the paper test. You typically see a list of items, maybe lettered A, B, C, D, E. Let's say the restaurant names. Then separately, you have a numbered list of descriptions or characteristics. Your job is to match each numbered description to the correct lettered item.
So you don't write the description, just the letter.
Correct. On your answer sheet, next to number 17, you'd write B or D, or whichever letter corresponds to the restaurant that matches description 17.
Got it. What about the computer test?
Often it's drag and drop, where you click on the description and then click on the matching item. It can feel a bit more intuitive for some.
Is there anything tricky in the instructions?
Yes, definitely check if letters can be used more than once. Sometimes one item might fit 2 descriptions. If the instructions say you can use letters more than once, keep all options open. If not, once you've used a letter, you can usually cross it off mentally.
Okay. What's this type testing?
Primarily, your ability to listen for specific details and descriptions, and crucially, to connect paraphrased information. Synonyms are huge here.
Let's try that restaurant example. Friends discussing where to go for an anniversary. Restaurants are A, Bentley, B, Sixpenny, C, Fred's Place, D, Lumi, E, Attica.
Okay, and the numbered descriptions might be 17, great seaside views, 18, fusion meals, 19, locally grown food, 20, seasonal dishes.
So I listened to the friends talking.
And they won't necessarily discuss the restaurants in order, A, B, C. They'll talk about the features.
Yeah.
Someone might say, what about Bentley? I hear it has sweeping views of the harbor.
Uh-huh. Sweeping views of the harbor is a paraphrase for great seaside views. So 17 is A.
Exactly. Then maybe someone else says, or Sixpenny.
They do that interesting mix of Mediterranean and East Asian food.
Mix of food sounds like fusion meals. So 18 is B.
Right. Then Fred's place actually grows its own vegetables. They have their own farm nearby.
Grows its own vegetables directly links to locally grown food. So 19 is C.
Perfect. And finally, Lumi is supposed to be amazing, but they only use vegetables that grow in that particular time of the year.
Only uses vegetables that grow in that time of year. That means seasonal dishes. 20 is D.
You got it.
Oh.
Now notice Restaurant E, Attica, wasn't mentioned in a way that matched any description.
So it's a distractor option. One letter might not be used at all.
Very common. Don't force a match if you don't hear one. Also, notice the audio followed the descriptions. Fuse, fusion, local, seasonal. More than the list of restaurants. You listen for the feature, then link it back.
Okay, synonyms and paraphrasing are key. Got it. Let's move to question type 5, sentence completion. This sounds a bit like the short answer one.
It's very similar in principle, yes. You need to fill a gap within a sentence using words taken directly from the audio.
No changes, must fit grammatically and meaningfully.
Exactly. Word limits apply often. No more than 2 words. Spelling counts. Hyphenated words are 1 word.
So what's the main difference from short answer?
Just the format, really. Instead of answering a question, you're completing a pre-written sentence. It tests your understanding of key information within that specific sentence structure.
Let's use that university assignment example again. Students talking. Sentence might be, the main assessment for this module is in blank.
And the audio might have a student saying, phew, at least we don't have an end of semester exam this time, just this massive essay to write.
So exam is mentioned, but it's what they don't have. The answer is essay.
Correct. Essay completes the sentence accurately based on the audio, another sentence. They decided their topic would be blank.
And they discussed global development, but chose global interdependence.
Right. So the answer is global interdependence. Even if global development was mentioned, the decision was interdependence. Precision matters.
Could the same answer fill 2 different gaps? Like another sentence was, the reading focuses on blank?
Absolutely. If the context fits, the same answer, like global interdependence, could legitimately appear twice. Don't let that throw you off.
Okay. What about an author? They were advised to read the work of blank.
Audio says, Professor Jones recommended Macquarie. Answer, Macquarie. Spelling here is vital. M-A-C-Q-U-A-R-I-E. Get it wrong, lose the point.
High stakes on spelling. Okay, and sources. They plan to gather information from the blank and the blank.
Audio might say, yeah, I guess we'll need to hit the library, and obviously search the internet too. So answers, library and internet.
What if the audio said search online? Could the answer be online?
Probably not for gather information from the blank. Grammatically, from the online doesn't work. From the internet does. So even if you hear online, the word that fits the sentence structure is likely internet.
The grammar check again. Sometimes you need to wait for the whole thought to get the right word form.
Yes, exactly. Don't jump too soon. Listen for the complete phrase or idea to ensure the word you choose fits perfectly in the sentence provided.
Okay, final type, number 6. Plan, map, or diagram labeling. This sounds visual.
It is. You'll have a visual, maybe a floor plan of a library, a map of a park, or a scientific diagram like our ocean wave example. And you have to label parts of it based on an audio description.
How does the audio usually work?
A key strategy pointer. The description almost always follows the sequence of the numbers or labels on the diagram itself. It might move left to right, top to bottom, or follow a path logically.
So you can follow along visually as you listen.
Exactly. You're listening for spatial language. Above, below, next to, opposite directions. Go straight on, turn left, it's on your right. And specific names or features being pointed out.
How do you give the answer? Is it words or letters?
It can be either, so check the instructions. Sometimes you choose a label from a box, A, B, C. Other times, like in our example, you write the words directly onto the diagram or into numbered gaps. Word limits might apply if you're writing words.
Okay, let's use that ocean wave diagram example. A lecture. What are we labeling?
Let's say the diagram shows a wave moving towards shore. Number 1 points to the water movement inside the wave offshore. The lecturer says, and within the swell, the water particles themselves move in a circular orbit.
So answer 1 is circular orbit.
Correct. Number 2 points to the very top of the wave. Lecturer. This highest point is known as the swell crest.
Answer 2, swell crest, specific term.
Number 3 points to the lowest point between waves. Lecturer. And the lowest point is called the swell trough.
Swell trough. T-R-O-U-G-H. Tricky spelling.
Very common for them to test spelling on these more technical words. Number 4 points to where the wave shape changes near the seabed. Lecturer. As the wave enters shallow water, its shape becomes elliptical. This is due to friction with the seabed.
Due to signals the cause. Answer 4, friction.
Exactly. Number 5 points to the water flowing back down the beach after a wave breaks. Lecturer. This return flow of water down the beach slope is called backwash.
Answer 5, backwash. Maybe they mention rip current as a distractor.
They might. They could say, this shouldn't be confused with a rip current, which is a different phenomenon. You need to listen for the term that directly describes the water returning down the slope.
So this type often uses more specific or technical vocabulary.
Especially in sections 3 and 4, yes.
Yes.
Precise listening for descriptive words, spatial relationships, and cause and effect is vital. It's about connecting the audio description directly to the visual information.
Okay, that covers all 6 types. Any final practical tips? You mentioned capital letters earlier.
Yes. For the paper-based test, when you do that final 10-minute transfer onto the official answer sheet, it's strongly recommended to write all your answers in all capital letters.
Why is that?
Just for clarity. It removes any possible doubt about your handwriting. Is that an I or an E, an A or a U? Capitals are usually unambiguous. It's a simple thing that can prevent losing points unfairly.
Good tip. Simple but effective.
Definitely. It just removed one potential variable for error.
So, okay, what does this all mean for you, the listener, the test taker? We've just taken a pretty deep dive, navigated the sometimes tricky landscape of the IELTS listening test. From its basic structure, the sections right through all 6 question types, looking at strategies for each one.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
You should now have a really full, clear overview. Hopefully you're armed with insights into how those distractors work, the grammatical traps to watch out for, and why things like inference and getting the exact words are so important.
It's more than just a summary, hopefully.
Yeah, it was meant to be a deep dive into the how and the why behind doing well in this really critical part of IELTS, giving you a kind of roadmap, maybe, to not just hear the words, but actually truly comprehend what's going on.
And if we just sort of connect this to the bigger picture for a moment, while we've focused intensely on a specific test today, the skills we've been talking about, listening for main ideas, pinpointing details, figuring out opinions, understanding implied meaning, following how ideas develop, these are incredibly valuable skills way beyond the exam hall.
That's a great point. It's not just for the test.
Not at all. Think about how consciously honing these listening abilities could genuinely transform your interactions elsewhere. In your studies, really absorbing lectures. In your job, making sure you fully grasp what colleagues or clients are saying.
Even just in everyday conversations, right?
Absolutely. Truly grasping what's being communicated, even when it's not spelled out explicitly. So maybe a final thought for you to ponder. What stands out to you personally as the most transferable skill from this deep dive into active strategic listening? How might you take that precision, that focused ear, and apply it outside the context of the IELTS test?